Welcome to Tools of the Trade, Part 3. We're going to be talking about iron oxide powders behind me here, some additives that I put in my concrete mix that some of you might find interesting or enlightening for you to find out what I use, and talking just about my sand and gravels and a few other little tools we have. So without further ado, here we go. And here we are, on to the next section here. So I'm not going to go too much into depth on the iron oxide powders because I do have a couple videos in my library, one for sure that I explain about it. So you can look through the library and find that video for you. But these are all the different ones that I use. It's like a sand color, a black, a green. This is another sort of a sand color, red or brick color, and then a hazelnut down on the bottom. I don't use them a ton. It depends what projects I'm doing, playing around with. I got a really good deal on some years ago. It doesn't go bad, so I scooped up a whole bunch of it. So that's why I've got so much of it here, just in case you're wondering. So iron oxides are sort of the standard in the industry for coloring. There's a few pastes that are available too that you can put in. I had a comment on a YouTube video the other day that someone said, oh, people are putting a lot of acrylics in their mixes. Is it okay to dump in latex paint as a colorant? I don't recommend that. I've seen it. I've actually done it. Not happy with the results. And I mean, iron oxide is proven and tried product that has a high UV rating for fading and longevity, so I just stick with this, and I don't think you'll get the results you like with using dumping paint, and I'm not too sure what the paint does in the long run to your mix as well. Okay, so we're just going to move on here. This was, I mentioned in one of the, I think the first video, I made a mistake and I ordered this huge thing of castor oil for my release that I use with isopropyl propyl alcohol, and this is going to be a lifetime supply. You can see it's a pretty big jug full of castor oil, but it's okay. A lot of years use out of that. This is the Plaster of Paris that I use for when I do my spins or my plaster pulls. When I'm doing new bowls or bird bath designs or what, this is the brand I use right here. It's just the dry Plaster of Paris by DAP. There's tons of different varieties. This is just easy for me to get this one here. Just beside me before we I get asked, actually this is a really common question, is what kind of fiberglass do I use? So this is it here. It's, I'll just rip off a chunk. It's 1.5 ounce chopped matte. I buy it a roll at a time. This is probably about 1/3 of a roll there. And that's about the most common one that we use for our fiberglass mother molds. So that's just what everybody always asks, what's the weight? Because there's all kinds of varying kinds, right? So, okay, then we'll move over to here. And this is, in this box, are my AR fibers. AR, again, meaning alkaline resistant. Right, that's not going to break down in your mix. Sorry, I'm in a messy bag here I can't open. There we go. So actually I'll just bring this over to the table. It's easier to see, I think. There we go. So I use the 3/4 inch AR fibers. I have talked about this before as well. I dump these in when I'm mixing my dry ingredients for my mix. I don't add them at the end, I add them beforehand. They will break up a little bit more. I've got a friend who uses a 1/2 inch, my countertop friend. They get even smaller than that. He really likes his 1/2 inch. I'd like to switch, but it's just that I've got like 2 or 3 cases of this kicking around, so I have to use it up. But for statuary or what, for bowls, especially bowls and planters, etc., I think it's really important to put in fibers. If you want to add some extra durability to your product. Okay, so I think while we're talking about the table there, let's look here. These 2 bins are almost empty, but this is my sand and my gravel. And I've covered this before, but let's just do it again because it is. So here we go. This is the stuff I use here. This is the sand that I use. You can see for normal statuary, you can see there's larger pieces in there. There's larger stones mixed in with it, and that's just fine for what I need. If you're using a mortar mix, it would be really fine, but this is what I like for ordinary, everyday statuary. This is the rock that I use here. It's a 3/8 P, they call it, but there's a 3/8 P that's river rock, they call it, and then it would all look like this, all round on the ends and the edges. Mine, you can see, is mixed with some sharps, what they call. And I think it's more important for concrete and for your cement to really cling on to these more sharper edged pieces there. It's just a buddy passed that on to me who worked with an engineering firm that did concrete bridges, and he said that was a real important thing for them, to make sure you had lots of sharps in their mix. So here is the sand that I use for casting leaves. And all I've done is sifted that out, is my regular stuff, and I've sifted it out. I either use a small hand sifter that you get for your kitchen, steal from your wife or whatever and get them mad at you, or you've seen the other day, and I think part 1, I talked about the big sifter that I built over there, that box right there. And then I can just put that up on a couple 2x4s and shovel sand in a couple minutes. I've got, a 20-liter bucket full of fine sand, so it only takes a few minutes. But that's what I use for all my leaf castings. Okay, so back up here again. This is just the shovel that I use for the scooping the stuff out. And here just some large brushes for dusting off plaster pieces that I'm doing. So here we go. So the PAM I used to use a lot when I did stepping stones and plastic molds. You spray it with a little bit of PAM, or I'd spray a brush, is even better. Spray the brush and then brush your mold. You're not getting any pooling going on. Don't use it that much, only once in a while if I'm in a pinch. If I've got a little bit of concrete left in the mixer and I don't want to waste it, I'll grab a couple small plastic molds and I'll give it a quick spray with PAM, or a quick brush with some PAM and do them quick. But when I first started, like I said, I was doing all stepping stones, so I used to use a lot of that stuff. It's good stuff as long as you don't use too much, because it will stain your concrete. The little blue one there, that's just water and soap, dish soap or washing up liquid. And I just use that when you're stripping your molds and you have a tight one that's really hard to get the rubber off. Spray the little mixture on there and it'll pull right off. It'll just rub on itself, the soap, and makes it easy for release. The one with the red tape, that's my isopropyl alcohol and castor oil. That's what I use for my release. So you just give it a good shake in the spray bottle before using, because of course the oil's going to settle to the bottom, so give it a really good shake. Even if you're spraying a bunch of models, every couple of minutes just give it a good shake and spray away. And that's my release agent for my rubber. And the next two are just water, spraying down for anything. If I'm going to stain something first, then I want to spray it with a little bit of water. If I'm painting a base coat on, I'll spray it mist with a little bit of water before I get started. And they're just handy to have for lots of little things. So here is just what I use in my plaster. Once I've done a plaster master, or I've done an original mold with plaster, this is the kind of stuff that I would use for doing patching. It's easy stuff. You just mix a little bit up with water, right? And boom, and away you go. And it's ready like in a half an hour or so. You can sand it already. It's pretty cool stuff. I like it a lot. I think Webb in the forum, you use this quite a bit too. It's the cat's pajamas, as they say, instead of the other word. But, okay, and then down here we have Weld Bond, which is a great glue for concrete. Like if you snap a little piece of, I know I use the PL Premium for big stuff, but if you knock a little something off of your statue and you just need a quick stick on there, this Weld Bond works great. And it also dries clear, so it doesn't leave them. The PL, you have to be careful when you glue something together because it's a yellow color or like a earthy yellow color. You want to make sure you wipe off anything that's squeezed out because it'll dry on and look like that. This stuff is nice. It dries clear and you can't see where you've used it. Just some bonding agent that you dump in your mix, kind of like your acrylic. In the back is just a plain muriatic acid. I use that for etching some of my pieces, mixed with water, like 50%. If I want to make sure I really get a good bond with my water-based stains, I'll put some of that on first and rinse it off quick, just so it etches the surface of your concrete so you can get a good bond with your colors. These are just things I rarely ever use. I just have it around. Quicksetting cement, and underneath is the hydraulic cement, the kind you can put underwater. Sets really quick. The bottom one, it's like really fast. I don't use it much. I know some people use quick setting in their molds. I don't. It's just because I pour so many. If it works for you, that's awesome. It's good. Keep using it. It's a quick concrete cleaner. I found it actually doesn't work all that great. It's, I guess, good for oil or something in your driveway. But I've tried it for removing stains, you know, after you cast a leaf. It doesn't work so good at all, actually. In the back there, what do they call that? That refractory cement. That's for, because I have a wood burning stove out of my greenhouse, and where the pipe exits the masonry, it's a heat concrete, so it won't be affected by the heat of the pipe. So I don't use that for any concrete work, just out in the greenhouse. So here is I'll just show you this. This is the plasticizer that I use, the water reducer. This is the brand. Fritz Pack is where you get it from. It's available in the States and in Canada. Lots of, I think, National Concrete in Canada carries this. I love it. Been using it for a few years now. It's really good stuff. I add it towards the tail end when I'm doing my mix, when I've got it about where I like it, or the maximum that I would put water in, and then you add this to make a really loose mix. And I found it's made a big difference for getting rid of bug holes, for flowing nicer into your molds, getting less voids, and no, just a nice product. And I wouldn't not use it again. I highly recommend using some kind. There's lots of different kinds out there. I had to play around. I tried a few over the years, wasn't happy with, but this one I'm thrilled with. I really like it a lot. This we'll cover in another video. This is my what I use for patching my concrete. If you do have a bug hole or your seam line, when you grind your seam line off, if you want to hide it, this is my mix here. I think I'll talk about it another day. Okay, but that's up here. This is a little round over trowel. When you see my bench making video that's coming out pretty soon here, you'll see why I use that. Okay, so this is a concrete stone. Some people use it on the seams. I think it's a little bit big and too rough for that. I use it for if you have the base of a pillar or something that's quite sharp, like a 90-degree sharp, and the edges are just sharp. Those are always the things that get nicked off. So I like to take this, and you're going to just run along the bottom or the edge of the concrete on an angle, and it just rounds over that edge a little bit, so you don't get that breaking off effect. That's just the mason's hawk in the back, you know, the one they carry around, and they're doing vertical stuff, or stucco guys uses. I've used it a few times for a few projects, but it rarely gets used, to be honest. Just different size scoops that I use for the bins here, or getting concrete out of the mixer. I don't know if many of you have ever seen this before. I know I was a chef for 30 years. It's a piping bag, but this is a mason's piping bag. It's rubber inside, or a heavy vinyl. I use it for some of if you have some smaller, I have a pagoda, the legs are sticking up, and it's just, there's small openings. So, and I have a couple other ones with the same. So what I do is I fill this bag up, and use that to fill the model up instead of trying to scoop into a tiny little hole. So it actually comes in really handy. I actually use it quite a bit. So a mason would use that if they're going along repairing some seam lines like between bricks or something. They'd use something like this and repipe some mortar in between the bricks, and then they'd use a tool like this for smoothing out the joint afterwards. Again, just some more scoops and a sieve and some more sieves. If I just need a little bit of sand done in a hurry, I just grab one of those guys. So now here we go. This is a 12 volt vibrator that I use if I have big pillars. You can see how long it is there. For using for big models, big pillars. It's on the vibrating table, but it doesn't hurt to get this down in here. I'll just turn it on for a sec. It's good for just consolidating concrete into a big, if you have a larger mold. I have a great big commercial one. It's just way too powerful for any of my molds, even my big ones. It would probably just bust them wide open. It's got so much power to it. But yeah, that's the wrong battery. I ordered a battery and they sent me the wrong one. So that's why this little chamber is flipped over. But it still works great. I use it a fair bit. It's awesome. Here's my 1/2-inch electric drill. When you're mixing in buckets, when I mix my plaster, or if you're mixing just some mud up quick in a 5-gallon bucket, they're awesome. It's just more dependable with the plug-in variety than your cordless, because you don't want that thing dying on you in the second of you're doing your mix. Here's some of the beaters that I use. This one I really like. A stucco guy told me about it and where to get it. They're sort of custom made for this place, not too far away from here. They're fantastic. If you ever see one like this, I'll just give you a hint. When you first get it, file down all the edges, all these edges on the sides here and on the bottom. What happened was the first time I used it, they're sharp, and you go in your 5-gallon bucket and you mix up and it looks like you've put that in it. What it does is it just shreds your bucket up. The plastic, it shreds it all up, it shaves it off, and it all gets in your mix. I had to dump a whole thing out and I couldn't figure out what it was at first, and then I realized that this was so sharp, it was just cutting the bucket up. But now that's all smoothed over. It's an awesome mixer, does a great job. This one's pretty common as well. If you're mixing in a 5-gallon bucket. My buddy uses, and a lot of people have, actually, they're the double auger kind. It has 2 handles, one on each side. You hold it and it's got 2 augers like a giant kitchen mixer. They're fantastic, a little expensive, but I have been thinking in the last year that I might get myself one. We'll see. We'll see what happens this year. We'll see if Santa is nice to me or not. So that's pretty much it for this little section here. I think I covered everything. Any questions, just feel free to ask. If you're on the forum or if you're on YouTube, go ahead and give me an ask. And we'll look forward to number 4. We'll be over in this section, my mixer, and there's a whole wall full of tools there. So we'll probably be doing that next Monday as well. Okay, gang, thanks for watching.